Just moments ago, Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty to all federal charges in the high-profile killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione was arraigned on murder, 2 counts of stalking, and a firearms charge. This comes just one day after the Justice Department filed a formal notice saying that it intends to seek the death penalty against the 26-year-old. Prosecutors say he shot Thompson in the back on a Manhattan sidewalk as he was headed to an investors conference last December. Attorney General Pam Bondi calling it a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination. A lawyer for Mangione says the decision to seek the death penalty is barbaric. We're joined now to discuss with defense attorney Misty Marris. Misty, thanks so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us. So prosecutors cited in part Mangione's alleged desire to provoke broad-based resistance against the healthcare industry as part of justifying their seeking the death penalty. I wonder how that factors in.
So, Boris, it's a great question because prosecutors, in order to move for the death penalty, and now they've formally filed their intention to do so, have to show aggravating factors that would put this case in the bucket of cases that have been, the death penalty has been sought previously based on legal precedent. So what the prosecutors are doing in this document is laying out what those factors are. And it's not only that you have a premeditated killing, but you have a premeditated killing with a broader purpose to impact the insurance industry and to make a broader statement on society. So that's where prosecutors are going. And you see that the defense is actually using that against them by saying that basically Luigi Mangione was deprived of due process. These were extrajudicial statements that were made before the government filed this petition, and therefore the death penalty should be off the table. So expect to see this issue continue to play out before the court.
That was going to be my next question, how you see the defense approaching this. And it's especially interesting because Mangione clearly thought through what he was going to do, given that he wrote a manifesto about it. I wonder how that factors into what you're describing.
So Luigi Mangione is charged in federal court with murder with use of a firearm. That is a death-eligible case, but not every death-eligible case actually goes so far as prosecutors seeking the death penalty. So say the death penalty was not on the table of this case, it would be a life without the possibility of parole. So what the defense is doing is making several arguments to preclude the death penalty from ever coming into the courtroom. The first is what we spoke about before, extrajudicial statements, which they say violated Mangione's due process. The second is that defense says they didn't have the opportunity to submit information about mitigating factors, meaning factors that would tend to show this should not be a death penalty case. And then, Boris, on that front, there's also legal precedent. And what the defense laid out is that other cases where the death penalty is sought in general had multiple killings, or the 4 in the past 30 years where there was a one killing were related to larger drug rings, RICO cases, larger conspiracies. And so what they're doing is making a distinction about Luigi Mangione versus that other precedent. But this shows a real shift with the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to seek the death penalty in a state. Now, this is federal court, but we're talking about a state where the death penalty doesn't exist. So this is a shift in the Department of Justice, and the defense is really going to capitalize on that and say that this is politically motivated. This isn't because it should fit into this rubric. Look at the precedent that's been before. So those are all the arguments the defense is raising.
And that's the federal case, but he's also facing some state charges. I believe it's murder and terrorism in New York. He's pled not guilty to those. He's yet to enter a plea on firearm and forgery charges in Pennsylvania, where he was apprehended. Do these local charges in any way impact his federal case?
Certainly, and especially the murder charges in New York. We know that there's a handshake deal between the Manhattan District Attorney and the Department of Justice that state case will go first. That could change at any time, especially given the severity of the penalty that the federal government is seeking against Mangione, the death penalty. But all of the evidence is going to be interlinked for us. And you're talking about an investigation that was multi-jurisdictional. New York, federal and Pennsylvania law enforcement. You're also talking about cases that are going to have evidentiary issues that will overlap. And we're already seeing that. That Pennsylvania case, that will go last. That's the least serious of the charges, but they're already challenging the admissibility of the evidence. Expect to see that happen in all three of these cases.
Misty Marris, always appreciate you sharing your expertise. Thanks.